morning, welcome to Catex TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. Today is Friday, September 25th, 2015. If you want to follow us on Twitter, please go to Catex TV. Well, the smoke is really beginning to clear now as to why Zurich was not complete in pursuing its target of Royal Sun Alliance. Zurich announced this morning that it currently estimates aggregate losses of about $275 million US in connection with the August explosions at the port of Tianjin in China. The $275 million estimate of losses is net of reinsurance and before tax. Zurich plans to provide a further update on November 5th. Beyond the port claims from Tianjin, Zurich reports that it now expects weaker than expected profitability in its general insurance business in the first half of 2015. Specifically, they said large losses, excluding those associated with Tianjin, will be at levels similar to the results of the first half of 2015. Further, recently completed reserve reviews indicate a likely negative impact of around $300 million in the third quarter in relation to prior year liabilities for U.S. auto business. So that's probably about $575 million extra that the company did not expect paying when they began the pursuit of Royal Sun Alliance. They also announced that they plan to reduce their workforce in Germany by 500 jobs to become a, quote, better, leaner, and more cost-efficient company. More than 60 people have been injured and 200 homes damaged in Indonesia after a 6.6 magnitude earthquake rocked the eastern part of the country. The quake apparently hit not far from the coastal city of Sorong, and there's expected to be further damage and injury results announced during the day. Last night, during a 55-minute speech in Massachusetts, Federal Reserve Chairwoman Janet Yellen said that the Federal Reserve still intends to raise its benchmark interest rates this year. Ms. Yellen, speaking a week after the Fed announced it was not going to raise rates just yet, said that the economy was improving, labor market conditions were improving, and the Federal Reserve expected that inflation would follow. She said that the march toward higher rates will continue unless internal U.S. economic data points the wrong way. She is going to discard foreign economic trends. At some point earlier in the speech, Ms. Yellen nearly collapsed because of apparently dehydration and fatigue. She was treated by emergency medical technicians on the scene, but was fine. Volkswagen is going to name Matthias Muller head of its Porsche division as its CEO today. It's going to purge other managers in the Volkswagen unit in an attempt to show that it's acting decisively to end this crisis over rigging U.S. diesel emission tests. Muller is a 62-year-old veteran of the company. He was chosen at a supervisory meeting to replace Martin Winkelhorn, who resigned. Volkswagen is also going to dismiss the head of its U.S. business and two top engineers. Here's an interesting story. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini has blamed mismanagement by Saudi Arabian authorities for the deadly stampede that left over 700 pilgrims dead and at least 90 Iranians. The Supreme Leader of Iran declared 3 days of mourning to mark the tragedy, and during prayers today at the Central Mosque in Tehran, the names of the 90 Iranians who were killed were read aloud. Khomeini said the government of Saudi Arabia must accept a huge responsibility for this catastrophe. Today's incident shows mismanagement and lack of serious attention to the safety of pilgrims. The Saudi ambassador to Tehran was called into the Foreign Secretary's office for a formal complaint. A highway crash involving two trucks, a bus and a van, killed 22 people and injured 13 in southern China this morning. The government in Hunan province said in a statement that a flatbed truck lost control and veered into opposite lanes of traffic while dragging a smaller truck driving in the same direction. The trucks collided with an oncoming bus and a van. What a scene that must have been. Highway traffic in China typically gets much heavier in late September as China prepares for its traditional Moon Festival and National Day holidays, which the National Day is October 1st. A Cathay Pacific flight bound for Hong Kong from Perth, Australia, was forced to divert to Bali earlier today after one of the plane's engines began to flame out. It was an Airbus 330, two-engine planes. The pilot shut down the engine. All 254 passengers and 13 crew safely disembarked in Bali. Cathay Pacific is one of the best airlines in the world. Pope Francis is getting ready to address the UN General Assembly. He finished up in Washington yesterday after addressing a joint session of Congress and arrived in New York City at about 5 p.m. He has a full day there and then tomorrow morning heads to Philadelphia for his last stop on his American tour. The message is one of hope, one of humbleness, one of conciliation, and an awful lot of traffic. That's the news for today. If we have any breaking news, we'll come back and tell you. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you Monday.